Welcome everybody to the podcast. I was bleeped out. And that's why today I would introduce you to people. Episode 20 of the podcast. I got Colt.
Damn, my name Colt.
He just looked zoned out. I was like, this is Colt. He's staring at his microphone. He's like, I'm about to talk. Just give me a second. We got Wenzel.
Hey.
God. And we got Cody.
Okay. Hello.
Wow, we are
We all died when the podcast started.
Wait, we're doing a podcast?
Oh my
I
god.
haven't even started recording yet. Today, we will be tackling a very serious issue. Not really. We are going to be talking about censorship in different forms of media, mostly in video games,
Movies,
and television, movies, stuff like that. This is a total Wenzel idea. If he says something stupid, blame it on Wenzel.
Yep. God.
I should mention that the research we did for this was minimal.
I did my homework all week. It's just please understand.
Let me tell you, if you're listening to this podcast and be like, I want to be educated about censorship.
Wrong place, baby.
Wrong side of SoundCloud, baby. SoundCloud, Chance didn't pay this money for you to be listening to this.
Yeah, and it's
so if you want some good banter,
you came to the right place.
Should this be? Never mind.
What were you about to say?
No, I was just thinking like, man, if you want some good banter, listen to this because we're probably not going to talk about anything about censorship. That's a lie.
I'm censoring your talk about censorship right now.
Gosh.
So let's talk about what is censorship.
Bleep.
Nobody. Gonna answer.
I thought Wenzel looked like he was about to say something. I mean, okay, you can go.
I have I think it's called hglegalsources.com. Don't know what that is, but let's.
This is a valuable source.
As far as I'm concerned, it's got some stuff about constitutional law. So let's talk about it. So what is typically censorship? Let's talk about that. With the term censorship refers to government acts of banning or altering media, speech, or performance. So in the world of laws and stuff like that, it's basically the government saying, no, you can't do this. But some TV shows actually bleep stuff out and stuff like that. They do that for certain reasons. There might be reasons to cater their content to a certain country. You know, There's a lot of things that we see coming out of Japan, specifically with like religious symbolism they did a lot of religious symbolism in games from the 80s and 90s that they censored, like especially Nintendo did a lot of censorship.
Yeah, Nintendo's censoring all the titties in Shin Megami Tensei. That's messed up. That's really messed up.
Anyways,
That's Colt's really only issue with censorship.
And then you have censorship like on TV where they might bleep it out. Like you get one use of the F word per season, and you have things like
Not in American Horror Story.
Not in
this season.
South Park.
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, American Horror Story this season. They're going all in.
Oh, really?
The season 7, yeah. Like
I
Sarah
haven't
Paulson's
watched
already
it.
dropped it. Maybe 10,000 times.
Wait, F word? Which F word?
F-U.
And it also depends on your prime time and things like that, because censorship is kind of the line between what the government says you can, or what the FCC says you can say, versus what you can say get away with the demographic in which you're presenting to. So like you wouldn't want Jerry Seinfeld dropping an F-bomb at 6 p.m. when everyone's sitting around the TV watching TV and eating dinner.
Yeah.
You're gonna want that F-bomb to be dropped at like 9 p.m. in Game of Thrones, or HBO is a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say HBO is a
it's
little
an exception,
different.
but you want it to be dropped on like FX with Nip Tuck. You want to hear the S word in like the S word. You want to hear shit in
Snake is the word.
something like Adult
Like Breaking
Swim.
Bad.
Yeah, or like Pussy in South Park.
Hey!
Yeah, and there are different shows that cater to different audiences. You're not going to have old people watching South Park. I mean, you might, but you're not going to have like the prudish types watching South Park. And so because of that, they have a little bit more leeway in what they can say and what they can't say. But you also have the limitations of the FCC and stuff like that as well. Some typically censored stuff, just real quick. I'm giving everyone kind of just a splashdown rundown so everybody can think of some things.
Sure.
This is a roundtable discussion. Things that you've seen censored, things that you would like to see uncensored, opinions even.
I would like to see this podcast censored.
Censor us.
Because
We don't have an
petition.
explicit
I
tag.
mean, if we're gonna be honest, we censor ourselves a lot of times.
Yeah.
And not because we're gonna say something like off the wall bad, because we do say fuck shit stuff like that, but we censor ourselves from like political conversation, stuff like that, to prevent like segregating someone, because we all have opinions on different things, and we don't want to segregate somebody, or not segregate. What is it called whenever you push someone aside?
Segregate.
Just push them out.
You don't want to push someone out from the podcast because they get turned off by whatever opinions we have, because we all have different opinions and things like that. So we have to censor ourselves on this podcast. So censorship is a broad range in which it's used. But here's some things that the government actually censorships. Displaying excessive or graphic violence, containing matters of mature nature, depicting persons in various states of undress or materials. So sex is typically banned and stuff like that. You may see some breasts, but you will hardly ever see female genitalia on screen. You might see a dick slip in like HBO, which is very rare, which dick slips are already very rare, but you will never see female
Besides
genitalia.
in Game of Thrones, from what I've heard.
Yeah, Game of Thrones got the most dick I've ever seen.
But the thing is, though, is that like it doesn't have that much.
Yeah.
It has a lot, but it doesn't have that much.
Because half the characters' dicks cut off.
Are you spoiling Game of Thrones for me?
I might have. Never mind.
That dragon, dick off. There's also stuff like intended to elicit prurient reactions from those viewing and containing matters which must be kept secret for national security and public safety. So that's an interesting little tidbit right there.
Can't say where Area 51 is.
You can't. Well, wait a minute. Is it at Area 51? You can't say certain things on TV. There's like censorship to like that. So you can't. So newscasters and things like that, you can't bring on some people like for those types of things. You can't bring on certain people like, oh, this person was this person. You can only disclose so much before you get in trouble. And there's different ways to get in trouble as well. So anybody want to add on to that in the conversation?
I would like to say, and like, this obviously happened, or this didn't happen. Well, the episode came out when I was a kid, so everybody here would have been fairly young. This is when Family Guy did that whole thing where Peter was being censored and the FCC was following him around. And they did that whole song called "Screw" or "F the FCC" or "Screw the FCC," something like that. I like to say what you want about Family Guy, but I always thought that was like really interesting, like the way they did it, because just Stewie, Peter, and Brian singing about like, oh, the FCC does this and this, and like I think obviously like there's some things that people shouldn't be on free television, for instance, or like to a degree. But I think the song like really articulated the point, like how not lenient, but how frustrated networks can get sometimes. Like, well, we got to do this, and we got to do this, and we can't. You have to, because a lot of times people are like, well, the way to get the 18 to 25 or 35-year-old demographic is you have to be edgy. There's only so edgy you can be within the guidelines of the FCC, especially like for a show like Family Guy. New episodes of Family Guy comes on Fox at like 7:30 on Sundays, and like you can't really be edgy in that time slot. But again, if you showed it at like 11 p.m., really not going to do good ratings. So like you kind of have to find that line.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Reason why we even chose this topic is because me and Colt were just talking about it one day. We were playing Titanfall 2. We were just talking about how ridiculous censorship can be, and how it used to be really ridiculous back in like the 1950s and stuff. Because I remember watching that video essay by Captain Christian, he's on YouTube, about South Park, and it was talking about censorship and language, and he was talking about how like society has really like changed, especially in the US of A.
We're all saluting right now.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be singing the
Bald
pledge.
eagle noise, Tanner.
Is that what I...
But yeah, and he was just talking about how like society has essentially matured. That during the 1950s with the TV show I Love Lucy with Lucille Ball, how when she was pregnant during the show, how she couldn't say pregnancy or pregnant, it was censored. And it's like you're thinking like, well, why? Honestly, I don't know.
I mean, it's wild, like how, like, because I love Lucy, like, fun fact, but like it's so interesting just to see how censored they were in the 40s and 50s, like that, and really, especially for women-led shows like I Love Lucy.
Yeah,
like it really wasn't until I mean, what was it? Probably the Golden Girls that got super edgy, that like openly, from what I've seen, obviously, and again, I don't know the most.
Golden Girls confirmed for the most edgiest show.
Yeah, but like,
I mean that is pretty. I mean,
but
it's
Golden
really
Girls
edgy.
dealt with like these older senior 56-year-old women dealing with like sex and like stuff that teenagers or adults usually dealt with, but it's like these older women that are supposed to be like nice and proper.
They're open about their sexuality.
Yeah, they're open about their sexuality, and they're talking about like because they're all widowed, and you're like, "Ooh, you're widowed. You're not supposed to be having sex anymore."
Yeah.
And they're like, "We got needs. Like,
Yeah.
somebody's gonna have to be coming up with something."
It's important to look at. I think that we're hitting a really good line, specifically in censorship, is that a lot of times people think of censorship as what's being taken out, and sometimes people think that censorship is what's not being added into to prevent. But also there is this fine. I think that the second one, what's not being added in or what's actually being said, is like the development of censorship. Because like 15, 20 years ago, hearing shit on TV was unheard of.
Yeah, you would have
Yeah.
never heard it. Even 10 years ago.
I think the first time I ever heard shit on TV, like the word shit, I never heard fuck. But the first time I heard shit on TV was on FX. It was like I was skimming through TV and it was Nip Tuck, I believe, was the thing, and it was a more adult show. It was rated M, and FX kind of like stood outside that line, and then now you hear shit on a lot of.
I mean, like Conan O'Brien, like a prominent late night talk show host, like he doesn't get censored for saying shit. I don't know if like Colbert or Fallon do or anything.
Oh gosh.
But, like I know for a fact Conan O'Brien will just like say shit on the air.
Yeah, and it's just crazy to think that like Captain Christian said in his video how like back then that might seem weird to us, but it's like to them that was completely normal, which I should have probably researched this more, but I'm thinking like, was it for moral reasons? I don't know. It's weird. But and then something else too that they censor as well is that a couple couldn't sleep in the same bed. Like in every TV show that involves a couple, they always had to have twin beds that were separated, which that's just so upsetting because it's just like, not like just sexuality. It's just like, they're like,
it was looked as taboo till literally like the 70s.
Yeah.
But it was like everybody did it. Like there would be no more people left.
Here's an interesting little tidbit that I'm actually looking at the FCC website, fcc.gov, and fcc.gov. If no one knows this, any policy related to any part of our government is laid out on the internet somewhere. It really is. You can read it on official government website. Like the government, while not transparent in actions, are typically transparent in what their policies are, and they really do, especially in these like FCC and things like that. They do try to stick to those guns and things like that. Now the FCC ruling literally says, this is from the FCC.gov website. It's the Consumers FCC and Freedom Speech Guideline. It says that the courts have said that indecent material is protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution and cannot be banned entirely. So indecent material, like saying shit, saying fuck, showing some partial nudity, is perfectly okay. And again, it's perfectly okay. However, here's the catch. Between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m., where there's a greater likelihood that children could be watching, indecent material is prohibited. So 11 p.m. Well, it's when some of these night shows come on. Like I don't know what time Conan comes on.
Like 10:30.
You can say things like that. You can say shit. You can say those considered to be bad words and things like that. And again, profane material is prohibited between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. And so I'm looking through currently, and I may have to let it go to somebody else while I look through it. But I'm also looking at the obscenity, indecency, and profanity stuff, like what is and what isn't. And it's pretty cool stuff. So
I mean that's like us. Look how most of us, like, we did a whole episode on Adult Swim. Like that's how most of us got our creative processes and stuff. Processes. I was watching Adult Swim when we were kids, but like look what time Adult Swim came on. Like 10 to 6. Like it came on in that time frame. And like thinking about it, like obviously like it wasn't like grotesque stuff on Adult Swim. It was just like edgy cartoons like Family Guy, I guess, and that's where we were like, oh, this is more interesting and new, and like all this different stuff, like you had like Boondocks and stuff or whatever, and like just watching that, and like I think part of that is good because I think if a child grows up and like doesn't hear a cuss word till they're in like high school, I think that's first off just relating to cuss words, nothing else, but like shit and stuff. I just see them as words. Like, it's so weird to me.
Yeah.
Like, public. But if you're talking to somebody, like, somebody privately and you just slip into shit or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I wish we could get to the point, and I think we're slowly getting there, where that's not seen as taboo. Because again, they're just words. Like, I don't understand why there's such an unwritten law, like, where you can't say shit.
Well, words have power.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. But I've talked to my dad before because we get in this argument about language and stuff, and I'm like, Dad, they're literally just words. And sadly, the only thing he can back his argument up is, well, in the Bible, like
See, it doesn't say in the Bible, well, these are the words you can't say.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. But the thing is, though, is that like a lot of times you adhere to these social structures. Words have power. Words have meaning. And if you're using words that are considered to be indecent, then you are to a most majority. Think about it. Laws only work because we agree to them.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Because we as a society agree to them. If we as a society agree to the strict, like not strict, but if we agree that those words are obscene in some degree, as long as in society some sects of society that is intermingled with other sects agree that those words are profane, they will always carry that connotation of profanity.
Yeah.
And so that means that we will always deal with that issue as long as you're in an area. Now, there's certain areas where that sort of applies, right? So, and also it depends on the situation. In formal situations, no one gives a shit. But in business situations, you're not going to go into a business interview and be
Our
like...
profits this season were the shit, let me tell you.
I mean, and some people do.
Yeah.
Like, there's this... just today...
Like I say informal businesses, but especially now where more businesses are starting up because of the internet, I feel like they're more likely, like a Rooster Teeth. I feel like that could happen in a Rooster Teeth.
Yeah, yeah.
But like a Apple main, like Tim Cook walked in and like somebody was giving a presentation to Tim Cook. I don't think they'd be like, let me tell you, Tim, these
Y'all won't believe.
these phones are dope as shit.
Have y'all
And
ever
just let me
seen
tell
an
you
iPhone
what.
before? It's crazy shit, guys.
Everybody, Tom Hanks from Forrest Gump.
I'm from Auburn.
Wait.
I went to Auburn. Yeah, Tim Cook went to Auburn.
What?
Which, going to that, it's like, even though that does upset me, because it's like, I'm not saying that, like, I don't curse, whatever you want to say. I don't do it, like, constantly, but I'll do it every once in a while.
You do it.
You cuss.
No. Sorry.
You do it more than me.
No. Wait, hold on. Let me take it back a little bit. I don't do it in front of my parents, is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say. Sorry. But,
Why the fuck not?
but the thing is, though, I'll occasionally let one out, and my dad gets on to me all the time, and I'm like, Dad, it does not matter. It really doesn't. What?
Nothing.
I'm like, it does not matter, and he just always gets on to me, and I'm like, you know what, Dad? Like, whatever happened to the whole thing, like, sticks and stones may break my bones, but, words will never hurt me. It's like, well, that's different one. So I'm like, but is it?
Like obviously there's a fine line between, like, if you're using them derogatory towards a person. Like, I think that's a line that probably shouldn't be, like, calling somebody an MFer. I think that's bad. Should probably never happen. But just like,
unless it's in a joke situation.
Yeah,
where
I mean,
Unless
sure,
my
like
dad is being an MFer.
unless Whistle's
well,
father.
he is.
No.
Oh.
But you know what show actually? It wasn't so much a censorship issue, just so much as a cuss word issue. SpongeBob. They did a great episode where they bleeped a bunch of stuff.
Dolphin noises.
with the dolphin noises and the boat sounds, and they called them the sailor words. And like,
Yeah.
it's kind of that mindset where, because when you think of a sailor, you think of somebody older, I guess. And like, they're like the old ancient words that like your elders use when like Mr. Krabs, he stubs his toe at his mom, or no, Mr. Krabs' mom stubs her toe, and she lets out all of them, or whatever, and then she's like, "What? That's just old man Jenkins like passing by in his car," and it's like it's a great euphemism, whatever. But I actually think it was a great episode talking about, just because I've watched it recently, not even pertaining to this, just because I've been watching SpongeBob when I go to bed. But it's just so great that like. It came out like 2002 or 3. Like, it's a fairly early episode. I'm like, I was 7 or 8 years old when this episode came out. And they're like tackling an issue like this. And really, like, a bunch of early SpongeBob, if you watch it, tackle like certain censorship issues in a weird way that you really wouldn't understand being a child. Like, I don't know. It's interesting.
Do you guys? Okay, so I'm about to blow your mind.
My mind has been blown.
If people don't know anything about, if any people have never read any legal stuff, sometimes. I mean, I haven't read.
I've read Harry
much.
Potter. So.
I've read some dealing with computer stuff and things like that. But one of the big things that I'm about to talk to you about is this. Y'all need to know how vague our laws are on obscene material. So let me just say this. Indecent material is okay. It's protected by the First Amendment. Obscene material is not.
What is?
It's probably a very gray
What
line.
is obscene material? Well, let me just tell you. So, obscene speech is not protected by the First Amendment, and broadcasters are prohibited by statute or regulation from airing obscene programming at any time. I keep bumping my mic, don't I?
It's fine.
According to the U.S. Supreme Court's been through that. To be obscene, have this 3-pronged test for valuing if something is obscene. And number 1 is an average person applying contemporary community standards must find that the material as a whole appeals to the prurient interest. So that means material having a tendency to excite lustful thoughts.
I see. Does that mean don't show penetration on television?
So what's happening is an average person applying
really?
So an average person applying contemporary community standards must find that the material as a whole appeals to the prurient interest. Prurient. What does prurient even mean? I've seen it a lot.
Pure.
It's P-R-U, prurient.
Pure.
Do a Google here. Because this is important to know. Because it comes up all the time. Having or encouraging excessive interest in sexual matters. So that's what prurient means.
Okay.
So basically, it looks at. So this is one of the vague rules of our government. It looks at the community and says, "Hey, what does the world think, or what does the United States think is considered bad or considered obscene in sex?" And then that becomes one of the rules. And so it's based around, they specifically made these rules to be sort of vague so that you can always argue against them. So it's not hard set in stone, like no penetration, no butt play, no ass play.
Just imagine this man in the throne. I demand no butts. Show me what you got.
Game of Thrones and fucking Jon Snow's just eating Dany's ass. Anyways,
another Game of Thrones.
That's spoiler. That's a spoiler.
I actually saw
that never happened.
Well, I did see Jon Snow on top of.
Hey.
It was
On
on
top of
top of
Jesus
the
Christ.
dragon.
On top of Jesus Christ, tell him how
Oh
good
my
he is.
God, Cole! Why do you always make it so much worse than it
No,
already is?
he's like, I'm on the ball.
Okay.
Ah!
Going on to sorry, Enzo, I'm cutting you off.
No, you're good.
Going because there's the 3-prong. Okay, so the first one is the community has to think that the community as a whole, as in like consider the community standards, has to think it is incredibly sexual. 2, the material must depict or describe in patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by applicable law, which means like child rape.
Oh,
child
I've seen
sex
that in
scenes,
plenty of
things like that.
shows.
So like
Jesus, why?
I'm just saying, it's a thing that happens.
What shows?
that didn't happen.
South Park.
Okay.
Oh,
I've been watching a lot of South
It's
Park.
weird. Yeah, it's weird because cartoons have this whole different world.
You need to start prefacing these things. Like, I've seen that a bunch. Like, where?
God.
And
When I say South Park, I mean it's happened over 30 times.
and here's the one that's the biggest kicker to me, and this is what's really interesting and makes it difficult and makes movies like a Serbian film really difficult.
Oh, that happened in that too.
And really difficult to hit at because
But that's also banned in the United
they
States.
have to meet all 3 of these. I think they have to meet all 3 of these standards, or hold on, must meet a 3-prong test.
Yes, I imagine they would have to meet
So
all 3.
the material taken as a whole must lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So
you pretty much say whatever you want.
the Supreme Court has indicated this test is designed to cover hardcore pornography.
Yeah, so pretty much the obscene is just hardcore porn.
Yeah, it's basically
They don't care what you say.
So typically it's meant to be vague, but also not so vague.
Yeah.
So you could actually have a conversation about it. But what's interesting is that it lacks serious literary, artistic, political, and scientific value. I mean, can't you? Like Shia LaBeouf, he did that movie. Oh God, I forgot the name of the movie.
Transformers.
It was yes.
oh, wait, I meant holes.
Robot sex.
It was the movie.
That's not even a real movie.
Oh God, it was a movie. It was the what's the term for someone who's addicted to sex?
Oh, Nymphomaniac.
Nymphomaniac. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I know what you're talking about.
Nymphomaniac.
Okay,
He did that movie, and there was a straight up sex scene, penetration shown and everything.
Yeah.
But it was artistically done. And so, therefore, it doesn't really...
But isn't everything considered art if it's on television, really?
That's what's weird, is that, like, what the fuck is art?
Yeah, I think it'd be the governing body be like, well, this hardcore pornography is done tastefully.
But the thing is, though, is that, like... Yeah, and that's what it is. It's has to hold that value.
Yeah.
It has to hold that value, and that value is up to a lot of times what the community thinks and what the Supreme Court thinks at that time. So that's why our Supreme Court justices really have to be on the ball here, because if you get a prude person in there, that like they could, if you get someone who's like one side or the other, our that's why our Supreme Court system is usually based around like they may have like Republican, Democrat, etc.
Yeah.
But typically they make decisions on a swinging scale. Typically they take more moderate roads with everything, and that's what you want. You want. I mean, like, some people argue against progress, but you do want your people to be outside of that, so they can make really good decisions and things like that.
Fun fact about that SpongeBob episode earlier.
That SpongeBob episode you mentioned. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I meant to bring it up, but But somebody I know, not gonna say who it is, but somebody I know, her father originally said after that episode, he was like, "I think I'm not gonna let you guys watch SpongeBob anymore, because that implies that they were saying cuss words."
Yeah, I mean, you even have to look, like, I'm pretty sure SpongeBob for a little bit was shown on, like, MTV, because some of those earlier episodes were seen as, like, edgy, like, stuff, like the Hook episode, or the Hooky episode.
Patrick
like,
was around the hook, boy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of dumb. Like, oh gosh, just everything about like censorship is like kind of arbitrary.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, Nickelodeon especially used to do like a bunch of. I mean, Disney too.
I mean,
Nickelodeon on TV.
Censorship with, like, and I read this in an article. It's like, it was like talking about like how, like, and I agree with this. It was like racial stereotypes and playing just being blown up or something, like some gore like that, or like trying to take smoking out of old cartoons or something. It's like that I understand, but it's for stuff that's like just kind of like, I don't know. It's just kind of dumb. What were you gonna say?
I going to the smoking thing. I think it's good that like smoking's being censored out solely, and especially in older things. Mostly because in like the 50s and 60s, they were like, smoking's great for you.
Yeah, like
no ill effects or nothing. Like, you can just smoke all day and be great, and it relieves stress.
Yeah, like doctors would recommend smoking, but they said that like there should be a limit to how much you smoke, but you can smoke this much.
But you can smoke this much every day and it has no ill effects.
Yeah, it's just funny. And then like another thing too, it's like, even though I complain about censorship because it is kind of annoying, but it's like that's what makes stuff fun. Sometimes it's like it definitely brings.
And censorship can be used in like an artistic way too. Like,
yeah,
it can be used in a way that benefits a show or a piece of
art. The Office was the first thing that I thought of that used censorship to its advantage. Like, especially the scene where Steve Carell, where the fire alarm's going off, and he's like, "Everybody stay bleeping calm," and like that. Like, I think if he would just flat out said the word there, it wouldn't have been near as funny as him just going, "Everybody stay bleeping calm."
And people notice that, but also you got to think of like, what if a TV show literally just used these words willy nilly?
Yeah,
it would lose.
They would lose their value.
They would lose their value, and like, while I don't, censorship does get to a point of annoyance.
Yeah,
censorship, and we're not talking about government censorship here. We're talking TV shows. Mm-hmm. We're talking video game. Well, we'll talk about a little bit about video games because I do know a little bit about video game censorship. When we talk about that sort of thing, it's a little bit different from government censorship. Government should never be able to come down and be like, because the government, by FCC cannot. The FCC cannot say you can't air. They can't stop you. They cannot physically stop you. They cannot send in police. They can't send any sort of entity, government entity, to stop you from broadcasting. However, if you broadcast, you will have to deal with the consequences. Obscene material like sexual advances, things like that. I mean, they can fine you heavily for stuff like that. Yeah. And that's their way of attacking you, is through fines.
I was gonna say, going back to like things that aren't inherently bad but should be pulled from television. So Peppa Pig, I don't know if you guys have seen this controversy, but Peppa Pig aired an episode where they're like, spiders aren't bad, spiders are your friends. You can be friendly with spiders and they're fine, they won't hurt you. And they took that off the air in Australia because Australia is just full of poisonous spiders.
Oh, yeah.
And the show was literally telling kids, spiders are okay. Like, spiders won't hurt you unless you hurt them.
Yeah.
But like, in Australia especially, not the case. Well, everything can kill you in Australia, fact. But like, you don't want to tell kids in Australia, hey, that probably poisonous spider is friendly. You can go up and like, I think Pep on the show like petted and pat the spider, and like, Australian kids can't do that or they're going to get bitten and like die.
Yeah.
So in that instance, like, censorship, good thing.
Kind of, yeah. They
had to pull it off the air. They were like, you can't show this.
But then again, Australia also censored the South Park game by not even letting it come out. Well, they let it come out It's just that the whole anal probe scene in Stick of Truth, they censored the whole thing and replaced it with a koala crying.
Well, I feel like
What the fuck?
Yeah.
I feel like every time you hear about like a big censorship issue, it's Australia at the forefront. Like I remember, when Left 4 Dead 2 came out, it was a hand missing fingers, correct?
Yeah.
Well, in Australia, it was just a hand holding up the number 2.
Wait.
Yeah.
Like they censor stuff like that. Like they're pretty heavy about it.
Gosh,
And China also censors skeletons.
So does,
That's a different thing. I think
yeah.
it's religious, maybe? I don't know.
China has several things going on with them. Germany,
Not even just censorship.
Germany has also on the forefront of censorship, like with a lot of the Valve games. Like, gosh, we're going to video games. I have so much stuff to talk about that I meant to talk about earlier, but it's fine. With Team Fortress 2, there's a mode in there called Silly Bits or whatever, Giblets or whatever. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like it's just a mode.
Your character just gibbed and guts went everywhere.
Yeah, it was like it's meant to be very gory when you killed somebody. Mm-hmm. Well, in Germany, instead they replaced it with plastic doll parts. So it's kind of like that's kind of weird.
And again, I don't know that particular instance, and I haven't actually looked it up, so I don't know anything about it. And it's important to understand that we're interested in the subject, and we're still learning the subject. So if you are a person who is into censorship and things like that, and we're saying things that are kind of off skewed or whatever, we're still learning about it. And I know we're kind of putting it out there, but at the same time,
We needed a topic for this week.
I really like I like to talk about this type of thing because it's less of a no, you shouldn't censor me, or yes, let's censor everything. It's kind of like, well, how do we go about this? What should we censor? And you see censorship popping up everywhere, like government wise and things like that. But in that particular instance with Team Fortress 2, was it Valve that did it to to kind of cater to the people?
Well, actually, yeah, I should say I read this on an article as well. Valve did this to cater, and something else that they did too was for Counter-Strike. Whenever you killed somebody, they actually didn't die. What they did is they dropped their gun, or their gun was gone or whatever. They got down on their ground, lied face down on the ground with their hands above their head like this, and that's
What?
how. Yeah, like
What version was that?
it was just the first Counter-Strike. I don't know. It was really the old Counter-Strike, and it was like that's how they catered to Germany. Was that like instead of killing them, they just lied on the ground and surrendered.
And I think there's another thing that we should talk about is that our government's actually prevented censorship.
Yeah,
I think that's important to know that our government has given us tools and kind of, but the government's not all bad when it comes to censorship. There has been moments in time where we've had good things kind of come out of censorship and things like that. We've had not necessarily good things, but we've definitely had things saved. Like, for example, 1992, 1993, Mortal Kombat, the bloodiest game that's ever been. Parents of every PTA meeting was like, don't let our kids, this is what's ruining our kids. This violence happened with GTA a few years later.
Happened with GTA like 5.
And it happened with
a couple of
Doom.
years ago.
Like 10 years later, and then 10 years later. And so you see this about every decade now. You see some sort of like major censorship, especially with video games. And video games have literally well, not really. It's metaphorically dodged the bullet a lot. And like when it was because of Mortal Kombat, the ESRB came about. And so now we have like the M, teen, etc. ratings, which is sometimes important for certain parents who don't want their kids seeing like what's the worst scene you've ever seen, like worst scene and you've ever seen in a video game?
Oh, that's hard.
Ooh,
probably the airport scene in Modern Warfare 2.
That one is
that
bad.
One's pretty good. That's a very good
Which,
example.
when you think about censorship in that game in Modern Warfare 2, there was a whole option you could just skip the level.
yeah,
Like straight up, you did not have to play it. They were like,
You didn't have. Well, yeah, you could.
yeah, you could
You
skip
could
it
have
all
skipped
to, I
it,
think-
or you didn't shoot a single person.
Yeah,
didn't have to
you
shoot
could
a
go
single
through
person.
and you not shoot anybody.
Yeah, but everybody else would be shooting.
everybody dies in the
that's
level.
that's a good example because I honestly I can't think of anything that was worse because I mean.
Well, I can't really think of anything that bad, but in GTA 5, there's a scene where you torture this one guy to give you this information about, I don't remember, some heist crap. But you
and
rip
that's
out
early
his
in
tooth.
the game too.
You will, in game time, you rip out his tooth, you
It's a quick time
electrocute
event.
his nipples,
It's literally
you bash his kneecaps.
It's really a button press, right?
Yeah, it's a quick time. Like you have to press the button Like it's like press triangle, and you have to press it faster for. I think it's Trevor doing it.
And the controller
Rip has
vibrates with every yank.
Grand Theft Auto has always, ever since I think was it 3 or Vice City, that's always had, like, San Andreas had the hot coffee incident.
Which, granted, incident like that probably shouldn't have been
Yeah.
in the game.
Well, I don't know. I think it may have been. I don't know if it was. I think it was a mod. I'm not really sure.
I can't remember if it was a mod or
it was in the PC version. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Just a one little thing, real quick. So indecent material includes.
I thought we were about to get an ad read.
Sponsored
Hey
by
guys, welcome.
us.
Let me tell you about MeUndies.
Fuck.
Oh.
Or what is it? Indeed.com. Like, everyone that's listening to the podcast is like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, so I need to hire somebody.
Oh yeah.
I hate that shit.
Let me tell you about Squarespace.
I kind of get so wanting. I kind of want to go and see if those podcasts actually use Squarespace. That would be interesting.
You handle it like a dick.
It's always. Wow.
I'm sorry.
So
My hand.
It's important to look at what indecent material is, because it is allowed, but it doesn't. Indecent material is allowed. So indecent material contains sexual or excretory material. So shit.
Yeah.
That does not rise to the level of obscenity. For this reason, the courts have held the indecent material is protected by the First Amendment and cannot be banned entirely. It may, however, be restricted to avoid its broadcast during times of day. So there's that whole children thing.
Yeah.
So the FCC looks at 3 primary factors when analyzing broadcast material. So this is their way of figuring out. This is the FCC, not the Supreme Court's ruling. This is the FCC and how they look and see if a piece of material is indecent.
Oh.
And so that is number 1, whether the description or depiction is explicit or graphic, whether the material dwells on or repeats at-length descriptions or depictions of sexual or excretory organs, and whether the and whether the material appears to pander or is used to titillate or shock. No single factor is determinative. The FCC weighs and balances these factors because each case presents its own mix of these and possibly other factors. So the FCC, like, it's vague. It's vague as hell. So sometimes you don't know if you're pushing it until you get a check at your door. Or a fine at your door.
Fine. You don't get. Thank you for crossing our line. Here's $50,000.
You show a vagina. Here you go.
It's one of those things where it's like, I think the reason why it's so vague is because people. It's ever changing. Media is ever changing. The art of television or movies or even music or video games is always changing, and that's the reason it's not so set in black and white. Because, like, oh, here's this new way they did it on this show, and it's nothing we've ever seen before, but we technically have to show it because, and it could be something terrible, I don't know, but, like, we have to show it because we don't have any guidelines against it.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I'm curious about. It's like with the whole sexuality thing. It's like, sure, child rape and stuff like that.
Jesus.
Or just
slipping that
stuff
in.
like that, like awful, terrible, shouldn't be shown.
Yeah.
But stuff like just a man and a woman having sex.
Yeah.
Like consensually.
And you do see but you see the grinding, but you don't see, like, any penetration.
You don't see penetration.
Yeah, which is like
that makes me more uncomfortable.
Yeah, it does, and I'm like, like
I don't know. I've never seen it before. So
which I'm not saying, like, we should see,
that.
like, essentially what's porn on TV, but I'm just saying, like, what's the whole reason behind it now? Because we're now in an age where, like, people are being more open about their sexuality, people are being more comfortable and stuff. So what's kind of the point anymore? Moral reasons? Because I think we're past
I can understand censoring it so kids don't see it.
Yeah, I understand that.
I could see it being a problem. Kids just running around screaming like, shit.
But
when you get down, there is, like, this whole, like, philosophical, like, not philosophical, I don't know what you would call it, but there is, like, this ethical idea of, like, why does any of this matter? Like, why can't kids know about sex?
Yeah, because
like,
it's
why
like,
can't kids know about this?
Because
but I mean, like, there is,
well, at the same time, when you have, like, 14-year-olds getting pregnant now, like, that goes into a whole population problem.
Yeah.
Where, like, we don't want 10 and 11-year-olds be popping out babies.
But I don't know if our government, well, maybe so. There's maybe some conspiracy theorists out there that think that, they're censoring sex in, like, TV shows to keep our kids from popping out babies as a form of population control.
That's just something I have to get to, though, is that it's like because like that's just something else that's a problem in this country. I'm going a little bit off topic.
Let me tell you every problem.
Is how
Wendell's like, my dad goes on these tangents, and here I go.
Well, there's something else I have to talk about my dad, but that's not related to this.
Is it about the shrimp?
The sex ed in this country is just awful.
Oh
terrible.
yeah, that's atrocious.
I don't even know what a vagina
it's
looks
just-
like.
It's just something. It's like, yeah, people can say, oh, we don't need kids watching this, so they're having sex. It's like, well, is that really the issue? Because even when they're not watching it, they're doing it. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're not properly educated. So
Yeah,
it's
so it's like, and then it's like kids end up getting pregnant. But when you notice in other countries where kids are taught it at a very young age, they understand it and they're like, oh, okay. So what we need to do is when we're having sex, we need to be safe. We need to wear condoms.
Yeah.
Birth
Full
control,
body.
stuff like this. And it's like, and I mean, right now we can't do it, but maybe later if we want to, we can because there's nothing wrong with it. It's natural.
yeah, it's a natural occurrence.
Me and you.
And it's
Just kidding.
And it's so weird because like
But also, some kids will be like, "But I'm young, I can't have a baby." But so they'll be like, "I don't need that condom. It feels great without a condom. I might as well. I just do it. I'll pull out. Don't worry."
we should mention when we say we mean like young teenagers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. We don't mean like 5-year-olds running around.
No.
But it's one of those things where like people again like if there was adults educating other people's kids about sex ed, I think a lot of it falls on the parents for the parents to be like, well, I'm not very comfortable with somebody else teaching my kid about sex ed. Like
I learned all about it from the internet. The internet is a life changer.
And I mean, that's the thing. Like, I mean, where we went to school, there wasn't a sex ed class. And granted, I don't know who would have signed up for a sex ed class, but like they didn't teach sex ed in like PE or in home ed.
We had a shitty sex ed in like 5th grade.
Yeah, in 5th grade, where they
It
were
was
like
a bunch of because we had a bunch of we actually like some I think someone here I think we told this before.
Yep.
In high school, we already told the story, but yeah, it was just at least in mine, it was just a bunch of.
We literally ate popcorn, and they were like, "Here's a baggie with deodorant in it."
It was the deodorant. It was Aqua Reef Old Spice.
Old Spice. Yep, the blue Old Spice, which
The
breaks
stuff
out my arm.
Like literally burns a hole in my arm.
Yeah, burns a hole in my arm. And we did that, but Cody, I know you did this as well. In 7th grade, we watched Dr. D, Birds and the Bees. I don't know if you were in science.
I never watched that.
You didn't with G-Man? I'm not going to say his last name on the podcast.
Wake up, Mr. Freeman.
Wow. Okay. Well, anyways, we watched Dr. D, Birds and the Bees. That went into like.
Let me tell you right now. Let me tell you what happened to us in middle school. Our PE teacher, God, he was a weirdo. He ended up moving. His wife was rich or whatever. You know which one I'm talking about, right? He ended up moving. But at that time, he just like they told him to do some sort of sex ed stuff, and so you know what he does? He shows us just STD infected vaginas and dicks.
They did the same, but I missed that
they
day.
did the same. And see, the thing is about this, like especially in the South, but it's literally all over the country. What most of the sex ed classes, or what they're told to teach.
This is what can happen to you.
Well, see, the thing though, that's all they show. They show the bad parts of it, right? And they said
Bad parts of herpes. What about the connection you make
like,
along the
I think
way?
there's some pros to herpes.
they don't tell people like, if you're gonna have sex, make sure you use a condom, make it somebody you trust and whatever. And it's like they don't tell them. They say
we need to know things like, hey, by the way, pre-cum can get a bitch pregnant.
yeah. I mean, it's
like that, or some things as simple as like don't wear 2 condoms. Like people are like, that's double the protection. That's
Like,
I'm
no,
protected
that-
194 or
that doesn't.
like
Gosh.
no, that doesn't work. The friction between the 2 condoms will literally rip, and you have a higher chance of getting somebody pregnant wearing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 condoms than you do wearing 1.
Yeah.
And
What
it's
about
like,
the tubing inside of a tire?
What the fuck?
just cut it down to size. Sew it together.
baby, look what I found on the side of the road. Found me a whole damn tire. We're like, we're gonna be getting real tonight.
But what I was just trying to get at though is that, especially in the South, they teach abstinence. But the way they teach it though is like, don't ever have sex at all.
Ever.
Like, and that's just weird because it's like, don't ever have sex. It's like, what about children?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you can do that, but don't do it for pleasure because that's of the flesh.
Yeah.
It's like, we're in 2017. What the fuck? Like, shut up. Like, what do you mean? Like,
Wiz is wearing a shirt that says progressive on it. He's like, I don't think so. Let me tell you about real sex.
well, it's just like, it's like we try so hard to hide it. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Like, we're not in.
Like, it happens. And most of the time, those people preaching abstinence or whatever, they have kids. Like, how'd you get it? You know?
Like, it's
It's
just
like, I know she ain't adopted because
The
you
will
look
of
just
God.
like her.
Abstinence doesn't work. It just doesn't.
It doesn't, and
The
it's
teaching doesn't. Now,
I mean,
if you practice abstinence, it does work.
yeah, but it's,
But the preaching of it does not work.
but the thing about abstinence, though, it's like
I don't know.
You know,
have y'all met Mary? The Virgin Mary?
gosh, and it's just like it's like you shouldn't do that because it's like the way they teach it's like abstinence before marriage. It's like but then the way they teach it's like don't ever have sex at all.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Here's what can happen when you have sex again. It's like, here's this guy's dick that's yellow and green.
They show you like, okay, you don't want to do that because teenage pregnancy. You don't want to do it because here's a fucking testicle full. I remember it.
They
It
would
was
just scare
covered
you.
in stuff.
And like, I kind of understand from a standpoint. Like, people should be like, it's a very real thing. Shouldn't just do it with anybody.
Yeah,
Frankly,
but the
like,
thing,
you shouldn't just be going around and being like, let me stick, the stick in all the honey pots I can.
yeah, but the thing is,
But at the same time,
that's what we need though.
We need to stick our sticks in all the honey pots.
we need, like, I'm trying to say it in a way where I don't sound like, well, this is what you need to do.
We-
But it needs to be taught. It needs to be something taken seriously. Like, again, because especially with people that we went to school with, there's some idiots, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's some idiots who be like, well, I didn't even know that your penis could get sick. And like, I didn't know something bad could happen.
I thought the only STD I could get was HIV, and I'm not doing butt sex.
They were like, literally, that's a real thing that happened. Like, I can't get STDs because I'm not gay, and I'm like, true. Let me
Fun
tell you.
fact: HIV spreads through females too. But and there what? I mean,
They're like, what? How?
there was another. I swear to God, someone asked a question in one of our classes that they asked if women could get HIV because you only hear it in the context of a gay male.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that
That's not a bad question if you're a kid.
it's not a bad question.
If you're a kid, yes. If you're in 17 years old,
yeah, that's a problem.
you should probably know.
But and I just that we should be sex ed should be not preventative.
Mm-hmm.
It should be preventative in like preventing to do sex. It should be like we understand that Snapchat's a thing. You're sending nudes and then you're going over.
Yeah.
We understand that this is happening. So let's talk about Let's talk
about some safe practices like birth control and condoms.
and going to church.
Be honest. If someone asks you, "Hey, if someone asks you, have you been checked recently?" You say yes or no. You get checked recently. That's another big thing. If you have multiple partners that was unprotected, make sure you get checked.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And also you don't need to, and it's kind of difficult because you do have to be kind of open to the other sexualities too. Like, you have to be like, okay, so they're gay kids and they're gay guys and they're lesbians and they're gonna do the thing too. So and you also have straight individuals. You have all sorts of individuals here. How do you have to figure out a way to have that same type of conversation between individuals and see if you can actually do that.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. It's just like, oh man, I could get into this because it's just so ridiculous.
Let's go from this real quick because censorship because that's also in a way a form of censorship.
Yeah.
The way we learn about things is a form of censorship.
Oh, it totally is.
Because I mean, censorship can come. Censorship is how censorship comes down, how information is given to us. If I were to tell, hey Wenzel, your hair is really tall right now.
What?
Oh my god!
That's being honest with you.
Yeah.
But if I were to say, hey Wenzel, your hair, looks pretty good, then you're like, okay. You're like, okay, because that information.
See, I wouldn't be like that. I'd be like, are you lying? Or did you kid? What's in my hair?
The way I said it to you determined that. And so, like, the way people say things to you, the way people frame things for you, that can be censorship in such a way. I could be like, oh, Wenzel, your hair looks... you kind of remind... You know what? Your hairstyle kind of reminds me of a rooster.
Of a cock.
Bringing it back full circle to a dick.
No, it's one of those weird things where it's like, I don't even know why, because like we're all, I'm going to toot our own horns here for a second. We're all pretty smart. Did anybody's parents ever sit down with them and have a sex talk?
No.
No. So we're all
Not until the other night.
we're all like, I don't want to say self-taught because that sounds weird, but like everything we know about sex ed, we learned it on our own. Like, it's just common sense.
I learned from the people in the back of the school bus.
Gosh,
I'm not kidding.
I learned about evolution from Pokemon.
God, Cole, you were just here with the dumb zingers
And
tonight.
just another example of teachers doing censorship things. I don't want to get into a huge conversation here.
That's another thing for another time.
Just another little thing about
that's a
censorship
worldwide
through
issue.
education and things like that as well. Like I had a professor a teacher. He was a teacher. Who told he was a life science teacher. We were growing plants and butterflies in the back room, and we had pond water.
You were growing pot back there.
I don't know what it was, like bean plants or some shit.
But he would smoke it. It was weird.
But we also had like water where we would like look at living organisms under a microscope and things like that, like pond water. And the teacher was like, "Now I'm supposed to tell y'all about this, but." Evolution, and he went into a spiel about evolution and how, and then at the end of his spiel about evolution, he did it in monotone voice where students were laughing, not paying attention. Everyone's kind of like, "You're so right." And at the very end of the conversation, he was like, "Okay, don't tell your parents to say this, but here's a joke, or not a joke, but he's like, okay, if evolution's real, then why are there still monkeys around?"
That's what I've been saying for the last 15 years.
Okay, shut up. Anyway.
God, you.
Has that not been what I've been saying?
Yeah. we
preface this by saying you're
question this
joking.
every
We're
night.
going to talk to Cole about evolution after this podcast.
God.
We didn't get into
Why'd
a
you
lot
say
of-
15 years? You're 18.
I've been saying it that long.
We're reaching the 50-minute point, guys.
Oh, God.
Of this podcast.
I
I didn't think we were getting to 20.
I just have one last thing to say about like the whole sexuality thing. It's like, just remember, it's nobody's business what you do, but be safe. That's pretty much it.
This has been your back to school special.
One of the I do want to say that to start wrapping up the podcast. Sorry, Tanner, I'm taking over your.
No, go ahead.
Bye, real quick.
Tanner's crying.
We didn't get to video game censorship, which I really wanted to get to.
Sorry.
So guess what? We're probably gonna have an episode in the future about video game censorship.
Probably.
Yeah, I'd be
Maybe.
down.
That'd be down.
Maybe.
That way we can get some
research.
research. I definitely want to, because I want to delve into the Nintendo censorship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Japan versus.
Just
United
bring the
States.
titties. Like, who's gonna be offended by that?
Anyways,
That's the podcast. Cole just said bring the
well,
titties.
I just have one more thing to say.
Winslow, you always have one more thing to say.
I
I know,
one more
I'm
thing to
sorry.
say.
Well, because like
you remember that SpongeBob episode you mentioned?
because I've been saving these and we've been talking so much. But I was just gonna say, the thing about creative processes. Going back to that earlier.
Jesus, that was 25 minutes
Because
ago.
I've been trying to say it, but people keep talking. I was just saying that I think that never mind.
Overwatch is a
Never
good
mind.
game.
No, you gotta say it now. You gotta say it now.
No, I was just gonna say it's like I think that children like at a certain point should be allowed to see things like Adult Swim and things like that. Be able to listen to this, because I mean eventually children are gonna find out because we're children. It shouldn't really matter. But I think it does help with creative processes because with somebody like who's like never cussed or never even heard anything like that, never even seen anything like that.
There are people out there like that.
They end up being very boring people that lead very boring lives. And I guess you could say some of them are creative, but they're very limited. And it's just like, what?
And we're not saying if you don't cuss, you're boring. We're not saying that.
No,
it's
no.
just not being
You need to
you need to broaden your horizons.
Yeah.
You need to be able to instead of saying I don't like that, try and say okay, I might actually like this.
Yeah,
or at least trying to like something, and showing some effort into it. Like I don't know.
I mean, you're not going to develop a creative process watching
Hey,
That's So Raven and Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
I did. I don't know what
okay,
you're
first
talking
of all,
No,
fuck
Cole,
you.
we have learned
I just
tonight.
watched Riverdale this past weekend.
Well, hold on. Riverdale's a different story. That show is
It's got-
artistically a masterpiece.
It's got I think Cole Spruce in it. Which one didn't show? Which one didn't show their dick?
Oh, wait.
I don't remember. I don't remember. But no, one of them's in
Dylan?
it.
Was it Dylan?
Dylan maybe in it. I don't know.
One of them retired for a little bit, and the other one did Riverdale.
Yeah.
One of them's retired right now, but they both went to they both are living pretty normal lives. They're just super rich kids at this point. They're really cool people though. Riverdale's.
Have you met them? Have you met the Sprouse brothers?
Super
Yes.
rich kids.
Here's the really cool thing about that show. He's the worst actor in it, and I'm not kidding. And he's got like a NYU degree in like liberal arts and like stuff like this. So.
God.
Anyways,
Yeah.
You got it.
am I wrapping this up?
I mean, I don't care how you do it.
Hell yeah, I'm going to wrap this podcast up. Okay, guys, thanks for listening to the censorship episode. We might come back with a video.
Cody's
game censorship
censoring me right
episode.
now.
Yeah,
Cody is censoring Tanner.
so if you guys want to I guess we should do plugs. I can't do this. Tanner, you go ahead and take over.
Okay, thank you everybody for listening to the censorship episode. If you give us some feedback. It kind of turned into a sex ed talk there for the last 20 minutes. So whatever. But
Wenzel's fault.
thanks, Wenzel. But if you any feedback, if you want us to touch on any other points, if we if you like this episode, it was more of a quote unquote serious episode. And stuff like that. If you like that sort of stuff, just let us know on Twitter at AYCH Podcast. We're on SoundCloud at All You Can Hear Podcast, iTunes, Google Play Music, All You Can Hear, Instagram.com/AYCH Podcast, Twitch.tv/All You Can Hear. Colt's eventually going to be doing some weekly streams.
Yes.
I'm pointing at him.
Yes.
What else are we on? I think that's about it.
Instagram?
Yeah, I said that.
Oh.
We're everything All You Can Hear Podcast. We're some variation of that on all your social medias.
Pornhub? All You Can Hear.
You can follow our Pornhub account where we post the uncensored version of this episode. And you can donate to us on Patreon. No. You can follow me on Twitter at Tanner1495.
You can follow me, Wenzel, on Twitter at WenzyWilkie.
You can follow me on Twitter at ColtD88. I'm starting to use it a little bit more because
you tweeted 2 jokes.
I realize it's just people saying dumb crap. Why not join in?
Colt, I almost have 1,800 followers, and
all you do is tweet.
Hello
Twitter. Hello.
I exclusively tweet dumb shit.
My war tweeters are
Oh
long.
my god, you don't even get my war fan. Okay, I'm not going to get into it.
You can follow me, CODDOC11, both on Instagram and Twitter. My tweets are typically just me getting excited and talking about something, and that's about it.
Censor this, bitch.
Wenzel's been waiting 55 minutes to say it. I can see it in his eyes. All right, thanks for listening, everybody.
Hey.